Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett.
I'll just sit down again, it's easier.
All right.
So I guess, are you moderating, or are we just gonna open it up to questions?
Or you could do that like you were saying, and then
Well, actually, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I was just sitting behind some people who. You, sir, did you say that he was a zombie and he was knocking people's teeth out? So that. Yeah, can you explain that? If you ask it in the form of a question. No, but I'm like perfectly intrigued. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
He got stabbed and shot a whole bunch of times and he didn't go down. So why is he reinventing his ideas? Like, well, he's a zombie.
And that's why he's knocking people's teeth out?
Man.
I like that theory.
It's actually, I mean, I guess I'm assuming that the guns we're supposed to believe they were using are 9mm, and I you know, somebody who's full of adrenaline. You're looking at somebody who's a super soldier.
He's informing us that the bullets that they used to shoot.
But you are the director, so I mean, you tell me.
No, I like.
I find it believable.
You find it plausible that a human being could survive a 9mm?
It's believable. Yeah, they invented the 1911 for that reason, because if you're hopped up, you won't go down unless it's huge.
Okay. No, I actually knew that, and that was kind of more what we were going for. But I like the zombie theory actually increasingly the more I think about it. But yes, that's what we're going for: is small caliber and you know non-fatal placement.
And super soldier.
And super soldier. Yeah. APG. But yes. So.
All right, next question.
So are you two responsible for your lead actor leaving Downton?
Oh, no, we first saw Dan on Downton Abbey, and you know.
Yeah, he was already off whenever I talked to him, so don't worry, he didn't betray Downton for this film.
I don't think we had that kind of clout. No,
Yeah.
he'd actually done. It hasn't come out yet, but he actually had done a Liam Neeson action film before this.
And he was, I think, Fifth Estate as well.
Fifth Estate also, which came out last year. So yeah, he'd already done a couple films since Downton before this one.
But none that he takes his shirt off in this movie.
None that he's totally ripped. We are responsible for getting him totally ripped. If that's the rephrase of the question, which I'm choosing to. Back there, yes, sir.
Just curious, is Moriarty a real place, or did you do it for the record?
Again, I wish we had that kind of resources. It's a town about 42 minutes east of Albuquerque, population 1,500, and it is famous for its fireworks stand.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty weird. It's like, it's a really small town. There's maybe 3 restaurants. We shot in one of them, and since we finished shooting in August, that restaurant's already been closed down, the one that's actually in the movie, so that gives you the idea of the, you know, anyways.
That's the longest anyone's ever spoken about Moriarty. Oh, sorry, so we're going to start repeating questions. So everyone can hear.
Should we redo all of them?
Should we start over from the very start?
Okay. Next question.
Oh, right there. Wait.
So your directorial style is really suspenseful. I just wondered if you were influences in horror genre.
Well, for this film, you know, I wasn't really, when it came to like the suspense sequences, I wasn't thinking of anybody in particular. I mean, my main influences in going into this were, you know, like, basically I should give a little backstory, like, when we were trying to figure out what movie we were going to do after our last film, which was this film, You're Next, that just came out, and after 2 years. We did this film, but Your Next was actually a big success for us. It got bought up by Lionsgate and put out in the theaters, and that was the first time that ever happened for us. And we ended up in an interesting situation after that, where normally after we finished a film, we asked ourselves the question of what could we get made next? You know, what kind of movie could we do that would have, you know, our sensibilities, but we could actually get the money for it, you know, the resources. And so that's why with Your Next, we did like a self-contained kind of home invasion thing that, you know, has a built-in audience for it. And after that, we ended up in a situation where we were not. What could we make next wasn't really as important because there was people willing to give us money, and those kind of things weren't the issue. The next question was what should we make next? And Simon and I, we didn't want to get pigeonholed as like home invasion slasher people, or like that was really important to us because we thought that this was a turning point in our careers, and we need to show people that we can do other things. And honestly, Simon and I first bonded over, actually the first conversation we ever had was about Hong Kong films, specifically, John Woo's The Killer. So we've always wanted to do an action film, and so we ended up going down the road on doing like a pure action movie that's like start to finish. It was going to be a non-stop chase scene. And, we were going to shoot in South Korea. It was like crazy, but then it's a long story.
It's really, the more we've been explaining this a lot recently, and every time we explain it, it makes less sense. What the hell were we thinking?
Oh, I know. So we were shell shocked from actually having a successful movie, and so like Simon spent a while on that script, and it just never really clicked because it was like we were thinking too cerebrally about it and weren't going with what our heart was telling us. We were thinking like this is something we should do to show people we can do an action film, and I think we just never got we just never got to the meat of the characters and the story.
Yeah,
so,
it just never worked.
Yeah, so after that there was a little depression period. We ended up doing VHS 2 to fill the void, and that was just a short film thing. One day I was sitting around the office at Snoop, that's our production company, and I was watching a stack of Blu-rays, and I just happened to put on a double feature of the Terminator and the original Halloween. And when I watched that, I was like, this perfectly embodies the type of movie I want to make, these two films right here. And so I called Simon up, and I basically gave him like a weird pitch about doing a sort of John Carpenter-y, like, taking like a Terminator cyborg type of thing in place of the Michael Myers and kind of overlaying that sort of, story together and a mashup, if you will. And then, you want to take that from there, actually?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is when you first said that, the only thing I could think about was that Mark Lester movie, Class of 1999. Where like the cyborg school teachers, and I just how like bad it was, and I was like, I don't know how, unless, sorry, I hope you're not all the fans of that film. But like for me, I was just like, I don't know how to do like an android story, but I had an old script idea that was much more serious. It was actually much more of a straightforward drama about like a soldier coming home to kind of take revenge on his family, and I started it back in 2007 before I started working with Adam, and abandoned it because it just wasn't good and it wasn't interesting and I didn't like it. And it was kind of like, it suddenly kind of clicked that if that story in the style and tone that Adam was talking about could be really interesting. And obviously it's very different, it's not a revenge story at all, but it has stakes,
Yeah, it was an interesting because it was like the first time that I think we fully figured out our kind of developmental process. Because I came to Simon with a very fantastical idea, and Simon had a more grounded version of it, and we put them together, and that's really what our sensibilities are: is trying to blend sort of like an insane kind of story, fantastical, and try to put it in more of a somewhat of a realistic, believable context. But going back to the question of like the influences and stuff, like obviously, like the John Carpenter, the early James Cameron movies, and just in general, and of course like stuff like Shadow of Doubt, which this has some similarities to in terms of just the setup, but like really at the end of the day, like I just kind of saw this film as sort of like a subconscious amalgamation of like all the 80s, because like the first time I started seeing action films and rated R films was in the 80s, and they were 80s films, and so this was sort of like this weird nostalgic kind of thing that I wanted to bring to it, and so long story short, John Carpenter.
And Chris Columbus.
Would you like to movie? I think it'd be for the franchise.
The question is, would we ever make a follow-up to this film? We don't seem to be able to get sequels. That doesn't seem to happen for us. But I mean, I do think this is a universe we'd like to explore further in some shape or form. But I don't know that would be our next move, because I think right now, kind of the only game plan that we have is to repeat ourselves. But yeah, I mean, there's various kind of ideas we have of where this story would go after this that I'm kind of excited by. Yeah. I mean, we would like to, but it'd be a while, and it would probably be contingent on people actually seeing this film, which would be contingent on it being distributed. So yeah, we're just not there yet. Anything else? Good. Is that it? Well, sorry. Someone said something. Someone has a hand up, but someone
Shut
said
the hand up.
Yeah.
Just a comment on because I noticed that you have the mask from your next in the party scene.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
Yeah, actually the guy wearing the mask in the party, basically what he's referencing to is at the party scene, there's a guy wearing a mask from our last film, Your Next, he's got on his head, and that's actually the film's composer, Steve Moore, wearing that mask in that sequence. There's actually one more Your Next reference, I don't know why we put it in there, it's kind of weird word, but that's an actual mask. And at the end, actually, at the haunted house, you can see it in the background really quickly. You can see Your Next written in blood on one of the walls of the haunted house.
Is there anything else?
So, did you, when you were saying the Terminator, so the music in there, were you thinking that when you did some of the music?
Yeah, that was that was a real big starting point in terms of the discussion with this, the score. Actually, the question was, was Terminator, the score, he's talking about was it an influence or whatever. The first conversation I had with Steve about the music was, we specifically talked about the synthesizers and Terminator and John Carpenter, or actually the score that John Carpenter did for Halloween 3. He didn't direct it, but he did the score for it. And it's a really good score, and it turned out that even though, you would think the Halloween 3, score would be something really obscure, Steve had bought all the synthesizers that John Carpenter used. He found it. I think there's like a list of them in one of the vinyls or something like that. And so he actually has all the synthesizers that they used to make that soundtrack. And so, to me, it was important that the soundtrack not sound like an imitation of like an 80s film or a John Carpenter movie or Terminator or anything like that. But I wanted it to have like a modern kind of sound, and that's what's cool about Steve Moore is that he's using all vintage equipment. So he's not like trying to imitate that sound. He's not using software and stuff. He just happens to be using, all those real synthesizers, and I don't think he even owns one past like 1990, but they're all the top of the line ones that would have been used back in the day. And so it just separates it into a different context so that it doesn't become too cheesy to me.
I'll also say that Adam drums the Terminator music probably about 20 times a day. It'll just be like doing the sound mix, and I'll just hear that like coming from somewhere.
It's my version of Tourette's.
He can't stop it at all. It's actually a problem. Is that it? Are you guys? Oh, you sir have.
I really like the cast. Do you have anything to do with it, or how's that work?
Do we have anything to do with the cast? I don't have a bit to do with it.
No, I mean we're all involved. Like Simon's also an executive producer on it, and basically the way we work is it's me, Simon, and Keith and Jess. Keith Kohler and Jess Kohler. They're the producers on the film, and we did all the auditions together and stuff.
Adam's really very brilliant at casting people who he has kind of a sixth sense for whether people are going to be likable and compelling on camera that even I kind of just don't get sometimes, like when I'm watching the auditions. Like, no, that person's being funny. And he can really, I really love the cast of this film, and they're all good people. I'm sorry they couldn't make it here tonight. They all kind of had to go back to their various productions. But we ended up with a wonderful cast in this film, all doing incredible work. But even beyond that, he has just a good sense of people that are just fun to watch. So even if I give them nothing to do, the film will still somehow engage you. Obviously, Dan Stevens being kind of first and foremost there.
Would you think it's insulting to call it a B movie, or is that kind of a conscious effort? Or
B movie's kind of.
Wait, are you trying to insult us?
Wait, are you insulting?
No, it's making reference to that. I wouldn't call it a B movie, but
Yeah, I guess kind of by definition, B movies sort of different swallow, right? Because it's like B movie as opposed to A movie.
Yeah, it's a genre.
So yeah, we've been some. Anyone else want to throw some pointed barbs at us? Might not get another chance. You.
Just a comment, that last line was perfect.
Oh, the last line? That was like a hasty kind of improv edition, sort of.
What the fuck line?
Yeah.
Actually, that was maybe one of the only improv lines in the film. So you just complimented Simon on one of the only lines he didn't write. No, I mean, that was like, we were like, that very last shot, we were doing it like, it was almost like 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And,
I don't know why I felt compelled to hold up the mic and say yeah.
and so it was like a long night of shooting, and we only did like 3 takes of it, and on the third one, maybe 4, but on the last one, I remember I just ran up to Micah real quick because I felt like we already had it. I was like, "Why don't you just say what the fuck at this?" And she was like, she just kind of like laughed, and she was like, "Okay." And then we did it, and I laughed my ass off, but I didn't tell Simon or the producers that she was going to do that. And I started laughing my ass off. I just looked over at them, and they were just like staring at the monitor, just like. And I was like, "Oh god, they really hated that." But then we just moved on, and it was fine.
Yeah, but it was weird because you did only like 1 take of that, right?
Yeah, just 1 take of that, and so it's in the movie.
Yeah, just ended up being kind of right. I'm sorry, couldn't hear that.
So she ad-libbed that, I guess. But
Yeah, originally it was more supposed to. It was in the script.
Well, Adam told her. I think you gave her the line.
Yeah, I gave her the line. I told her to say what the fuck. But originally in the script it was a little bit more vague at the end, and it just kind of ended with her like looking up and like she's about to say
The
something.
line I wrote, my dialogue, Adam really has to work a lot. The line in the script was, "Well, I never." I ended up doing a lot of improv because my dialogue is very stilted. And it just went on. She was just like, "My gosh." And Adam was like, he just kind of went over to me. And I'm over in the video, I was just furious, as you can imagine. But what can I do? I don't edit the film. Adam does. All right.